As the Rigvedic era gave way to the later Vedic period, around 1000 BCE, the center of civilization began to shift eastward from the Sarasvati region to the fertile Ganga-Yamuna plains. This transition marked a profound change in the geography, economy, and culture of the people. Settlements grew larger, forests were cleared, iron tools became common, and agriculture intensified. This was the time when the Vedic people transformed from semi-nomadic pastoralists into settled agricultural societies. The later Vedic period witnessed the widespread use of iron, known as Sharma Ayas, or black metal. Iron tools revolutionized agriculture by making land clearing and cultivation easier. Iron plowshares allowed farmers to cultivate the dense alluvial soils of the Gangetic plains, which were previously difficult to farm. This agricultural expansion led to surplus food, population growth, and the emergence of more permanent settlements. During the later Vedic period, the earlier flexible social divisions became more rigid. The fourfold Varna system Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vishyas, and Shudras became more institutionalized. Brahmins gained enormous influence as ritual specialists and guardians of sacred knowledge. The gap between upper and lower Varnas widened, and birth, rather than merit, started determining social status. Rituals became central to life during the later Vedic age. Large-scale, Yajnas sacrificial rituals were performed to appease gods and secure prosperity. These complex ceremonies were conducted by Brahmin priests and required precise chanting, offerings, and fire sacrifices. Religion became more structured and linked to political authority, with kings often performing grand yajnas to assert power and divine approval. The later Vedic period saw the rise of powerful political units called Janapadas territorial kingdoms governed by kings. Kingdoms like Kuru, Panchala, and Kosala gained prominence. These were no longer tribal chieftaincies, but organized states with standing armies, taxation, and royal courts. This era laid the political foundation for the great empires that would soon follow. As agriculture flourished and populations grew, settlements expanded into organized towns across the Ganga basin. These early urban centers were modest compared to later cities, but marked a new era in planning and governance. Houses were built with mud bricks, streets followed a grid pattern, and local trade boomed. Artisans, traders, and farmers formed the backbone of these growing townships. This was the beginning of urban life in the post-Vedic age. In the early Vedic period, women enjoyed a respectable status. But by the later Vedic period, that began to change. While some women still received education and took part in rituals, their public role was gradually reduced. Patriarchal norms became stronger, and women's rights to inheritance and education declined. However, references to learned women like Gargi and Maitreys show that female scholarship still existed, though rare. During this time, the sacred language of Sanskrit evolved into a more refined and formal literary form, while the Rigveda was composed in poetic hymns. This era produced the Brahmanas and Aranyakas prose texts explaining rituals and philosophy. Education became more formalized in forest hermitages, where gurus passed on knowledge orally to dedicated students. This tradition preserved the vast body of Vedic wisdom for future generations. Amid the rigid rituals and social divisions of the later Vedic period, a wave of spiritual dissatisfaction began to rise. Thinkers and common people alike started questioning the need for elaborate sacrifices and the growing dominance of Brahmins. This unrest planted the early seeds of reform. People began seeking deeper meanings of life, leading to the development of new philosophies that would later evolve into Buddhism and Jainism. As the later Vedic people moved further east, the heart of civilization shifted toward regions like Magadha in present-day Bihar. Dense forests were cleared, new towns were built, and powerful states began to form. The fertile lands of eastern India supported rice cultivation and large populations. This eastern expansion laid the foundation for the powerful kingdoms and empires that would soon dominate Indian history. In the post-Vedic period, the political structure evolved from small tribal units to larger kingdoms. Tribal assemblies like the Sabha and Sameti began losing power, replaced by centralized monarchies. Kings now claimed divine sanction, ruling over vast lands with the help of ministers, priests, and warriors. The concept of hereditary rule began to take hold, and royal authority became more absolute, setting the foundation for future empires. In the post-Vedic period, the political structure evolved from small tribal units to larger kingdoms. Tribal assemblies like the Sabha and Sameti began losing power, replaced by centralized monarchies. Kings now claimed divine sanction, ruling over vast lands with the help of ministers, priests, and warriors. The concept of hereditary rule began to take hold, and royal authority became more absolute, setting the foundation for future empires. By 600 BCE, the Indian subcontinent witnessed the rise of 16 powerful kingdoms, known as the Janapadas. These ranged from Gondara in the northwest to Unga in the east. Each Mahajanapada had its own army, capital city, and economic system. Fortified cities, organized taxation, and complex social orders became common. The competition between these states laid the groundwork for future imperial unification under empires like the Maurya. With urban expansion and political consolidation, trade and craft production flourished. Artisans produced textiles, pottery, and metal goods, which were traded both locally and across distant regions. The rise of coinage further boosted commerce. Rivers, like the Ganges, became vital trade routes. These economic activities not only enriched kingdoms, but also promoted cultural exchange across different parts of the subcontinent. During this period, the social order became increasingly rigid. The fourfold Varna system Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras was now deeply entrenched. Occupation, status, and even lifestyle became linked to birth. While it provided order and identity to society, it also led to growing inequalities. Lower classes and marginalized groups faced exclusion and limited access to education and rituals, setting the stage for social unrest and future reform. Among the 16 Mahajanapadas, one rose to prominence, Magadha. Located in the fertile Gangetic plains, Magadha's strategic location, powerful military, and resource-rich land made it a dominant political force by the 6th century BCE. Rulers like Bimbisara and Ajatashatru expanded the kingdom through diplomacy and conquest. The foundation laid by Magadha would later support the rise of India's greatest empires, Maurya and Gupta. The post-Vedic era saw what historians call the second urbanization. After the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, cities had vanished for centuries. But now, urban life returned with vigor. Cities like Rajir, Vaishali, and Kashi flourished as centers of trade, culture, and governance. This revival was fueled by iron tools, surplus agriculture, and increased trade. Urbanization changed the social fabric, paving the way for more complex societies. As society grew more complex, dissatisfaction with the rigid Vedic rituals and caste system gave rise to new spiritual movements. In the 6th century BCE, Jainism and Buddhism emerged, both emphasizing non-violence, meditation, and ethical living. Mahavira and Gautama Buddha challenged the priestly dominance of the Brahmins, advocating personal enlightenment over ritual. Their teachings found support among common people, merchants, and kings, changing the spiritual landscape of Asia forever. The intellectual revolution of the post-Vedic age also gave rise to renowned centers of learning. Universities like Takshashila and later Nalanda attracted students from across Asia. Subjects ranged from grammar, logic, astronomy, medicine, to metaphysics. Philosophical schools like Sankhya, Nyaya, and Mimamsa emerged, sparking deep inquiry into the nature of reality. This was an age when India became a beacon of knowledge in the ancient world. In the early Vedic period, women enjoyed relatively high statusm, even composed hymns. However, by the post-Vedic period, their roles had become more confined. Patriarchal norms tightened, restricting women to household duties. Yet, some women remained influential philosophers, like Gargi and Maitri, challenged norms through debate. Despite limitations, women's voices continued to echo through literature and spiritual discourse, hinting at both struggle and resilience. As the later Vedic period progressed, a new cultural horizon emerged, the Painted Grey Ware culture. This pottery, known for its fine grey texture and black painted designs, marks the shift from rural tribal life to early urbanization in the Ganga Yamuna Doab. Sites like Hastinapur, often associated with epic narratives, began to reflect growing political organization and craft specialization. This culture symbolizes the transition from the pastoral Aryans to more complex, settled societies. From clan-based tribes, society evolved into Janapadas' early territorial states. These were the first signs of political centralization in ancient India. Power was no longer just in lineage, but linked to land and administration. With fortified towns, proto-bureaucracies, and standing militias, these Janapadas laid the groundwork for larger kingdoms to come. With settled agriculture and political organization came the revival of urban centers. Cities like Kashi and Kaushambi became hubs of trade, learning, and administration. The Ganga became a major artery for internal trade, and goods began moving across long distances. This urban revival marked the re-emergence of towns after centuries of rural dominance. The later Vedic period also witnessed a spiritual evolution. While ritual sacrifices remained important, a shift began toward inward contemplation and philosophical inquiry. Forest hermitages flourished, and sages like Yayanvakya began questioning the meaning of existence. This transition laid the groundwork for the Upanishads and the coming age of philosophical awakening.